I was just going to say, that I was thinking about, let me get it up. That I ran across this article, and it from this person on Twitter. She goes as One Small Voice at Smiling Outrage is her handle. And she said this, and I just feel like this really speaks a lot. I read it and I was just like, wow, that's saying a lot about how I feel, and I think how a lot of people feel. Maybe not 100%, but I think it's a lot. And it's titled, "I Never Cared."
Yeah.
I believe more and more people are starting to feel the way I do. I never cared if you were gay or whatever acronym you choose to call yourself until you started shoving it down my throat. I never cared what color your skin was until you started blaming me for your problems. I never cared about your political affiliation until you started to condemn me for mine. I never cared where you were from in this great republic until you began condemning people based on where they were born and the history that makes them who they are. I have never cared if you were well off or poor, because I have been both, until you started calling me names for working hard to make a better life for myself. I've never cared if your beliefs are different than mine, until you said my beliefs are wrong. I've never cared if you didn't like guns until you tried to take my guns away. Now I care. I've given all the tolerance I have to give. This is no longer my problem. It's your problem. You can still fix it. It's not too late, but it needs to be soon. I'm a very patient person, but I'm running out of patience. There are literally tens of millions of people just like me that are sick of all the anti-American crap. I've always cared about life and all lives, but now you try to force the notion on me and other fellow citizens and patriots that certain lives matter more than others. You protest, riot, attack, burn, and loot. Your so-called movement has become a radical, out of control bunch of thugs, criminals, and anarchists. I can't even say the word, anarchists who are intent on destroying our country. The masses have had enough. America is the greatest country on earth. And if you don't like America, then we invite you to leave. We are done caring about your misguided feelings. You don't have the right to enjoy American freedoms if you are trying to take that right away from me or other Americans. Please pass it on if you care. And I'll drop the link below so people can share it. If you feel the same way, please do share it. This was on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, she says a lot.
Yeah,
she covered
there's
a lot.
A ton packed into that about everything that we're seeing happen right now. A ton. But realistically, this whole movement started from my own personal knowledge between the Korean and the Vietnam War. That's when the movement itself started. That's when I 100% agree with desegregation. I don't think that I don't think color should ever be a reason for anything. And for many years it wasn't, and then it became a reason, and then the movement the civil rights movement happened and desegregation happened, but then you had the bra burners and the feminists and the anti-war, and that's really where I feel like we started seeing a lot of the anti-American stuff happen. Now, I was born on the tail end of the Civil War, Yes, I am old.
You look good.
I do, don't I? I was born on the tail end of the Vietnam War, so I don't know anything outside of my own historical studies on it, which haven't been great, but I do know enough to know that that is when a huge feminist and anti-America movement happened. Or actually, I guess it was kind of anti-America, but it was anti-war too, which is kind of what we see now. But I just feel like her comments on everything else. So that was a big movement then, but it has just evolved and turned into this everything movement. Like in the 90s, there were movies made in jest and in joking about college protests on absolutely everything, and just the chaos and silliness of the people who were protesting everything. And South Park even made episodes where the protesters would have signs and they'd flip the board back depending on what they were protesting. And it would just, and it was intended to be mocking and silly, but it was a small group of people that were behaving that way, and movies were making fun of it. Now it feels like, and I recognize it's not the majority of people, but now it does feel like those voices have so much more airtime that it's all we see, it's all we know, it's all we hear, and it is being crammed down our throats. And it's you will accept it, you will affirm it, or you will be shut down. And that's the scary. That's the scary thing when the government says this is or you are not.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to our amendments, right? Freedom of speech, and the Mockingbird media has decided what our speech is going to be.
Right.
Our social media has decided what our speech is going to be. TV has come in and told us what we're to believe, and there's a reason it's called programming. So, but it is, we're being programmed at every level as to what to think and what to believe. And then there's, a lot of people are starting to wake up that, wait, this doesn't even make sense now. It doesn't make sense. And a lot of people are still, now pushing out, but it is hard when, I think in the very beginning of like the pandemic of it and everything, it was just like, you were told what to believe, and this is what you're going to believe, and you can't question the narrative.
Yeah.
And then we started seeing things that just didn't even make sense, And as far as like race in this, I know that we talked about it a little bit. I personally thought issues with race was going pretty well, that we were starting to really not have a lot of issues with race. There wasn't as much question about mixed marriages and whatnot until we had a Black president.
Yep.
And it was like, you would have thought maybe he would have done something to help with that, but no, he created more division, and by design.
Oh, absolutely.
And and so that, I think, really started things there, to really heighten it. And as far as, what I saw was, I think there's been ebbs and flows of patriotism in our country. And I saw a huge rise after 9/11. Everybody was out, with their flags and being a lot more patriotic. But then there was the division with the people who, supposedly attacked our towers. And, that created more division. So there's a second division now coming in as well. But I saw even, with my children who were born in the 90s, that, they rose with that patriotism, and then it kind of got squashed, because I found some different projects that they've done in school, and they were like patriotic. And I was like, wow, talking about the flag and, a book. And I was like, huh. So they actually did like talk about it. But then I feel like after that, they started going away from that.
Yeah.
And even so much as I see kids not even like, I think I've said this before, not be for their team. You go to college, you're generally involved in, that's my team, and you have spirit around that. And, I had, my older one was more into the spirit of it. Second one, not so much.
Yeah.
So it was just very interesting. You can see, and they're 2.5 years apart too in school, how it's progressed.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
I love progress is definitely a good descriptive word of what's happening.
Yeah.
Not progress. Progress.
No, it's
continue to become progressive in this country.
right. Progressive. It's like a four-letter word.
It kind of feels like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and I think that, and then I know we talked about this before too, it's just the loudness that they have, that
Mhm.
they are a minority, but they have been so loud that we were like, we were afraid to say anything,
Right.
to be calling a racist or misogynist or whatever
Right.
it is,
Right.
because I've been called all of them.
I,
Yeah. So it's just, yeah, it is, it's crazy.
mhm.
But it's really sped up in
It
the
feels,
last so
yeah, it
many
does. It
years
feels like it's
too.
on fast forward for
Hmm.
sure. I can remember, so I don't remember a lot of indoctrination when I was in school. I remember studying the reading, writing, arithmetic. I remember home economics. I remember my middle
Hmm.
school still had shop class and automotive and high
Hmm.
school. So I don't really know when those programs were pulled out because I was not super observant at that point in my life. But I do remember when my daughter was going to school, and granted, she went to school up here in Alaska, so it was still pretty um and at the time it was still very conservative up here. So her school was not super indoctrinating either that I'm aware of. But I wish I still had access to some of the history books from like when I went to school and when she went to school to see if there were any changes. And I'm sure you could get your hands on them. But my husband is in school right now, and he's going to a Christian college. He's going to Liberty University, and he is in a business class that is required for his degree. And this business class is using a 2023 book that is all about DEI. All about DEI. He's like sick to his stomach taking this class because, first of all, he can't believe that this school has opted to use this book
Wow.
for their curriculum. And I told him,
Wow.
I said, if I were you, I would get through the class because you have to have it to get your degree, but I would write the university and, just question. You call yourself a Christian university, but yet you're
Wow.
pushing educational books in a business class that promote LGBT diversity, so it is, you can't get away from it. He left, I mean, and granted, he left ASU because of the intense political association. And I mean, just his calculus professor at ASU, every email talked about how he knew he was a privileged white male living on native lands. Every email. It was more about therapy than it was about math. So that's why he left ASU, but
Wow.
he went to Liberty because they were a very accredited Christian college. And then he gets this book and he's like, I can't believe I'm having to read this. And he's reading excerpts out of this book. So to go back to that Twitter post, I mean, you literally can't get away from it unless, and I told him, I said, you could probably go to a private Christian college because Liberty may be private, but it's not crazy expensive. But it would cost, $12,000-$15,000 a semester to go to one of those colleges if you really wanted to hone in and make sure that you weren't getting liberal education. And it just, yeah, it sickens him to have to take this class. I mean, it really,
Yeah, that would, that's unbelievable.
yeah,
And I think we've already seen how DEI has, well, even at our federal government level.
I know.
I mean, it was, the people were chosen that were put in place. They were like, what? What is that? For DEI reasons. And we can see how our government is not doing well because why? It wasn't necessarily the best person for the position. It was based on DEI.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
Well, and
diversity, equity, and inclusion is not going to create the best.
I was
If you're
listening to I was listening to a podcast yesterday. It was a Ben Shapiro podcast, and I'm not sure, it wasn't yesterday's. I think it was a few days before. Apparently, DEI has even gone so far as to how they choose doctors in hospitals.
Yeah.
They are hiring surgeons based on their social score, their color, the color of their skin, whatever. It doesn't have to do with their credentials. And on top of that, some of the nurses in some of the hospitals have tweeted that they have hurt people who have come in wearing a MAGA hat or expressing their political views in some way, shape, or form. They'll go to draw blood or put an IV in and miss the vein and then make a joke about it on Twitter and reference their politics. The hospitals did not fire them. They suspended them.
That's unreal.
And
Somebody
defended them.
somebody posted locally in one of our groups, and this was the local hospitals, that she showed new doctors at 2 different hospitals in the Central Florida area. And one of them was they were all obviously from different countries. The one hospital, every single person was from a different country.
Mhm.
The other one she posted, they were all from this country, or they were all looked like they were from this country. They had names that you could pronounce, and they were, and this is, again, is like going back to the article. We don't care,
Right.
but we do care when it affects us, when it affects our health, when it affects our well-being. I don't care what you practice. That is your business. Love for you to jump over to, my side, and find Jesus, but, I'm not for cramming it down your throat, because you're probably not going to accept it. But it's like, yeah, we see it here in the free state of Florida.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about it, she talks about cramming it down our throats, and I agree, but it's not even so much just cramming it down our throats anymore. It's endangering lives. If you're hiring a surgeon because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity based on nothing to do with their skill, and then somebody has to get on the operating table, that's a problem. That is a big problem. And it's scary to think about having to go into a hospital not knowing if the surgeon is actually credentialed and good at what they're doing, because a hospital chose diversity over qualifications.
Yeah.
It just,
that is very scary.
It blows.
And we had a situation, I know it is, it's mind blowing. We had a situation here in Florida where they were, you could go to this place and get a certification for nursing. You didn't go through schooling for nursing.
Oh.
But you got some type of, I don't know, whatever credentials saying that you were a nurse. And they were being hired.
Okay.
Throughout the state.
That's terrifying.
And I don't know where else. It is very terrifying. So we don't know. And we don't know too, when people have gotten educations outside of the United States, we don't know what their qualifications are. They could be better, but they may not be. We don't know. What do they teach them there? We don't know.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. All I know is I hope and pray. I hope and pray for a conservative administration in November of this year that's going to actually take some ground back and stop allowing this type of leniency in our health systems, our government systems, because
It's gone crazy.
Yeah.
And if you all think it doesn't make sense, you're right. It doesn't make sense. A lot of it is like, I call it upside down world.
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't, or clown world. It doesn't make sense. A lot of what's being done, and it's like, and they're doing it with a straight face, and I'm like, yeah, because it's like all you can do is kind of, laugh, because it's like, this is ridiculous. Not laugh, funny laugh, but it's like, this is ridiculous. You know, why?
Right.
Yeah. But this is how far we have let it go, because we've let it go.
We have. We definitely have. We have not, the people who have the conservative voice, the people who consider themselves genuine patriots of this country, and not all of us, but I am definitely one of them, sat back and did nothing while this happened.
I did too. You know?
Mean, who would have ever thought we would get to this point in our lifetime, especially, and here we are, because fast forward was pushed when we got a Black president. That's where you can go back and look and you can see where things started to play out a little bit, but it was definitely not until Obama was in office that we saw the huge shift, a radical shift, and it has just continued. And then having Biden in office has made it tenfold worse than it was even under Obama.
Can you imagine if Hillary had gotten in?
Oh,
we would have been cooked. We would have been done.
Yeah, her power was much greater than his.
Yeah, just the fact that we had somebody step in that was for the people and push it back, so that, you know, they had to take back a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And I think it also created that situation where it expedited things, so it became more visible to us as well, of what they're doing, you know, what's going on. Doesn't always totally make sense, obviously, but it does to them. They because it's like, if you try to reason it, the logical person cannot figure out a reason for it.
Yeah.
Except that they don't want us around and they have an agenda.
Yeah, there's definitely an agenda. Yeah, I am, yeah. I don't know. My mind just went all over the place. Just things that I've heard over the last few days of the number of people that have come across our border, the state that I am getting ready to move back to, wanting everyone to be able to vote. Just it really feels, it really looks like, there's so much evidence to back it up at this point that it is all intentional, it is all planned, it is all for a purpose. And if we're not fighting, we're in for a very ugly road for those of us who want freedom.
Yeah, we are, because I think we talked about it before. Every state's a border state, so it doesn't matter because they're moving them around to different places.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know that a couple of years ago we had a whole bunch of them dropped off just one city over from us.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they showed them on the buses, and they were all men, young men of fighting age. So, and that seems to be the majority of what's coming in right now is young men fighting age, not women with their children.
Yeah.
Which is suspect anyway when they're bringing children across. So,
well, you know,
that's a whole other topic.
Dr. Phil just went on The View and talked about how the Border Patrol has admitted that they know that a lot of these kids that are coming across the border are actually going into sex rings. And there's nothing they can do about it.
I think,
they have these phone numbers attached to their bodies, and they call the phone numbers, and the people come get them, and that's the best that they can do. That, to me,
they don't check them out.
They're not allowed to, according to the Border Patrol,
which is really scary.
Wouldn't you wonder? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sure I'd lose my job, but I don't think I can willingly hand a kid over to someone knowing that there's these sex trafficking rings all over the country that are taking these kids. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, I think it was something like 85,000 children are unaccounted for. I mean, I got to believe it's probably higher than that, honestly. But it's horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
And people may be sending their children over thinking that they will have a better life here, not understanding or knowing. And some of them maybe can't afford, and so they do sell their kid, which is, I just can't even fathom.
Right.
But it's, yeah. And we heard, there's a man that I know that he has somebody who does work. She cleans his house and has for over 20 years. So we believe she is here legally. She owns property, blah, 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 blah. So been here that long. But she was talking to I don't know if it was her talking or somebody else from that job that was talking to somebody in another country and was saying, you got to come now. Now's when you need to come, because once Trump gets in, you'll get deported, blah, 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 blah. And he asked the lady, well, how can they get in? That's a very dangerous situation. And she's like, oh no, for $5,000 or $6,000, you fly into this particular airport and you'll get right across.
Wow. So they know the game down there.
Oh, absolutely. They know the game.
Yeah.
They've been told. And I mean, it kills my husband because he sees these videos with, the people coming across. Thank you, Biden.
Yeah.
It's like,
oh,
yeah. You're going to vote for Biden. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
It is scary because
it is. Well, it's creating such a worse problem for us. I know we have tons of vacant land here in the US, but we don't have jobs. We don't have the economic structure to support these people. And yet they're wanting to give them all free benefits and MasterCards with $10,000 on them. And the American people are not the people that our government works for anymore. And
not this government.
No. And without having a government that supports the American citizen, where are we going to end up? And that's why I think it's so important. And I love that we're having all these political conversations, because this is the most important time of our lives, with making sure that we, as American citizens, people who have all the rights here, and our rights are being stripped from us every single day, fight. We have to.
Absolutely.
Another part of it that was in there that I thought was important was where she was talking about, excuse me, it's early morning for me here still. I thought she mentioned trans in here, but that's the other part of it. There's a huge trans community in the much more liberal areas of the world, or of the country, that are being offered the surgeries for free. Like, excuse me, California wants to do them and offer them at whatever age, and they offer, full term abortions. That it's awful. I'm so excited to get down there and start fighting. But my point is, when you have government that wants to give a small population, but a population who is considered oppressed, and that other people want to fight for all these freedoms and all these free services, you lose there too. And I know I have relatives who have gay family members and I don't know them, I've never met them, but I do know that I have relatives that have gay family members, and so they would push for Gavin Newsom to stay in office because he's offering all of these free services to that community. But here's the thing. I have been watching a lot of detransition stories lately, and these people are so lied to, especially male to female transitions. They're so lied to. I watched one just yesterday, and the person was saying that he wishes that someone would have told him that he could dress like a woman without having to actually become a woman, because it's impossible to become a woman. And he was convinced that he
Mm.
could live as a woman. He could actually be a woman. And the surgery that he had to go through to get there didn't work. And he had to go through a second surgery to get there. And the doctors blamed him for it not working. They had no sympathy. They had no, they just gave him nothing. It's all about the money. And I wish that community could see it, because I know that they're pushing it so hard, especially with children today. But if they could just understand that it's not about them, it's not about what they, because if you think about it, if you have 45 minutes of therapy to tell someone that you are in the wrong body, and then they say, okay, here's your hormones, they're not getting to the root cause of anything. All they want is your money. They just want you on those drugs. They just want you to get that surgery so they can make money. And I really wish that that would come across the way that it's truly intended, instead of these people care about me and they want me to have everything in life that I could possibly want. Because there are so many transitioned people who are detransitioning because of the mistake.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and again, it's, don't shove it down my throat. Live like you want to live. If you want to, I don't agree with your choices. If you are doing that, biblically, it is absolutely wrong. But if you want to present as the opposite gender, do it, but maybe think twice, 3 times, 4 times before you take the hormones and before you have the surgery, because there's no reversal at that point. You can't change it back. And this man was so sad that he had no penis. He was so sad. And it was funny because he was interviewing with a transgendered woman, another man who refused to have that surgery because he did not want to lose that part of his
Mm.
body, even though he dresses, talks, acts, calls himself a woman.
Yeah.
So it's just,
Yeah. It's
we definitely live in an upside down world, but we live in a world where Democrats are going to, I don't even want to say Democrats, because I know that that's the party they're registered as, but they are not the Democrats of my youth, where these liberal
Mhm.
progressives are pushing for people to literally destroy themselves for a vote.
I don't know if there's really Democrats and Republicans anymore. It's
No.
more of conservatives and liberals,
Yeah.
really, and how far you go on the liberal side, because yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I used to know some more conservative liberals, but I feel like that line is becoming clearer and clearer with people.
Yeah, I think it is, and just in seeing the way people are registering now, or they will not, a lot of them will not make the jump from registering to Democrat to Republican, but will stop in the middle at NPA. And you know what? That's fine. You've now just said those are not my people. Um, so you know, be who you want to be. I mean, that's kind of what I started as, really, when I signed up. I didn't even know it. As naive as I was, and when I was in college, it's like I didn't know. They're like, "Well, what do you want to be?" And I'm like, I didn't know I was going to have to choose, and I didn't even know what my parents were. I had no idea. We never talked about it.
Yeah. I didn't know my
So,
parents, and I didn't know that my mom and grandparents were registered Democrats until I looked them up.
oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never looked it up. It wasn't until Obama came in that then there were conversations with my family
Oh,
members,
okay.
that knowing who sat on which side. So that was
Yeah.
interesting.
The only reason that I found out was because in 2017, my mother fell and hit her head and had left me a message that she was going to the hospital, but I couldn't find her. And so I had to go do all this digging to try and figure out where she was. And I was looking her up. What did I look? I was looking her up for some reason or another. and I found her political affiliation records. And so then when I saw hers, I was like, oh, but my mother never voted. I looked up my grandparents, who I knew had, I knew they were political, but my grandmother was in a union and my grandfather worked for a bank. So it didn't surprise me, but they were very conservative, even though they voted Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think it's changed for sure.
oh
The
yeah.
lines have
Well, it's kind of the
changed
same thing. I was thinking
for
about
sure.
it the other day. You think about, Republican was the party that abolished slavery here in the US, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abe was the first
Yeah.
Republican president. The Democratic Party was the party that wanted to keep slaves enslaved. That's what we know to be historically fact.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it today, and the Republicans are considered the racist party.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pay attention, if you really open your eyes and pay attention to where that divided line is, because as a Republican, and I've been a Republican my entire life, I recognize myself as a Republican when I was 12 listening to Rush Limbaugh. I've always had I've always had no blurred lines. There's never been a division for me with color, but there was with my family. My mother and my
Mm-hmm.
grandparents always had to differentiate black from white. I was never allowed to have a black boyfriend. There were rules in our house, but I never separated myself from having black friends or friends of any other ethnicity. There's as someone who chose to be conservative, Republican conservative, because I certainly wasn't raised that way, there's never been a division of color in my friends that I've hung out with that were conservative, in my um in my own personal head. Like it's just never been. I've always seen people for who they are. And we're actually going to do an episode hopefully soon on MLK, but it goes back to what he said, that we should judge people by their character, not the color of their skin. And that's what Republicans truly believe. I believe conservative Republicans. And yes, there are jerks on both sides of the fence who
Mm-hmm.
don't like the color of someone's skin. But as a general rule, it's Democrats that continue, or liberals that continue to provide that division. It's them that continue, just like Black History Month, the BLM movement, all of that. Those are people who are on that progressive liberal side. Why? Why do they need the division? Any conservative
Mm-hmm.
Black person will tell you right away that there's no reason for division. They don't believe in Black History Month. They don't believe, just go look at some of the conservative people of color and see how they respond to this stuff. And it
Yeah.
might change your thought a little bit about conservative views and values. Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went off on
Yeah.
a
No,
tangent.
it's true, but it's interesting because there are so many Black people that are creating that narrative. And I'm not talking about the conservative ones that they're, keeping their people oppressed, basically. And it's sad. It's sad to watch and see. But yeah.
I think about the Black people who are wealthy. Let's just talk about one in
Mm-hmm.
particular, Oprah. Oprah did an interview with I don't know if you are familiar with her. She was a Disney actress. Her name was Raven-Symoné.
Mm-hmm.
She did an interview with her recently and talked to her about her race. And Raven-Symoné said, I do not consider myself a Black African American. I don't know what my history is. I don't know my ancestry. And I don't want to be judged. I mean, this is not verbatim, but I don't want to be judged by the color of my skin. I'm an American. That's how I want to be
Yeah.
recognized. That's how I want to be treated. I'm an American. And Oprah went opposite of that, did not embrace it, and said, you realize you're going to catch a lot of flack for not wanting to recognize yourself as Black. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it matter? I
That's
love
just
that
creating
she just
division.
wants to be human. She just wants to be an American on this earth, loving on everybody. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter what your skin color
Yeah.
is. But
Yeah.
Oprah wanted that division.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was on The View with, what's her name?
Whoopi?
The black woman, Whoopi. I think that was with Whoopi.
Oh no, I
if I'm
saw it with
remembering
Oprah.
correctly. With Oprah?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was a
okay.
one-on-one interview.
Yeah.
So maybe it's happened more
Regardless, both very wealthy black women that are really pushing racism.
Yep. Yep. Why though? Why is it so necessary to have the division? What's the purpose? Think about it. Just put some thought into it. What is the purpose of having this division? Because is it equal rights? Because I hate to tell you, but I have never known a black person who didn't have the same rights that I have. That's been long gone. Long gone.
Exactly.
And I've
And
known
what's
many
all
black
this
people who make
reparation
more money
stuff?
than I do. Huh?
And what's all the reparation stuff? I mean,
Oh,
that's just a whole nother can of worms. But, because somebody's ancestry was black
mhm.
or whatever, that you should get money because they were enslaved or something. And a lot of them, understanding is, there were a lot of slaves that were actually kept very well.
I
They were
know.
given a lot of things. They were educated. They were, and when their time was done, they were, given money or land or whatever.
Yep.
So there were some good people. But what's to say that, I might have a little bit of black in me? I don't know. So should I get some reparations too?
Maybe.
I mean, come on. I might, any of us. And it's not just black people that were enslaved as well. There's a lot of different people that were enslaved.
Oh, yes.
And there's a lot of people right now that are enslaved.
That's what I was just going to say. Slavery is way worse now than it was back then. And if you don't think it is, do a little research.
Yeah, do research.
We might not see slavery on this side of the pond. That is people chained to a post and being forced to do land management and house cleaning. But the sex slavery industry is vast across this world right now. And indentured slavery is still a huge thing in Asian countries and India and Egypt. So do not think that slavery is abolished.
Yeah.
It's just not visible the way it used to be.
Yeah. And there's people that are enslaved here in the US
Absolutely.
for work purposes. So
Well, that's probably true too.
Yeah, there are. But I don't know if the majority is that. I have no idea. I don't know what the figures are on that, but yeah, there's slavery right here in our country.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, as always, vote your conscience. If your conscience says you want an administration that's going to continue to spend our tax dollars at astronomical rates and blow our country up into smithereens financially and emotionally, then, well, you just keep old Crooked Joe in office. But
Or who else ever
yeah,
comes in next?
well, so actually my pastor said his theory is that it's going to be Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom on the ticket. They're going to pop out of nowhere. That will be interesting. And he's got a lot of political friends, so he could be right.
Yeah, I mean, I keep hearing Michelle, so who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
It is.
Somewhere around the DNC, their national convention, we'll probably see maybe a switcheroo or something.
We have to. Biden can't do another 4 years.
And we don't want Kamala. And
no.
they don't either.
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not sure the yellow school bus can handle. They can't control her.
Very true indeed.
School buses because they're yellow.
Oh my gosh. So sad. How she was ever an attorney. It baffles me. It just goes to prove our education system is not what you might hope.
I'm not thinking no. Yeah.
Well, anything else that we need to add to this topic today?
I think we ran the gamut, actually.
I think so. All right. Well, our podcast world friends, thanks so much for tuning in. We hope that you learned something. If you have something that you would like to leave in the comments, please do so. We are welcoming them all day. And in the meantime, continue to do your own research, vote your conscience, because we are in the primaries right now. So it's voting season everywhere through April. And continue to stand your position, whatever your position is, stay true to it.
Yeah.
Don't flounder, but maybe consider a more conservative position because it's what's going to save this country. Other than that, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this podcast with anyone you think might be benefiting from it. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.